So now we have a scene switcher. That works great. Now all that we need to create is a title screen so that we can switch from our title screen to our main level. So let's quickly think about how title screens are usually set up. So there's a few ways you can set up title screens. One way is you can have someone design an entirely 2D title screen that maybe has art and your name, the name of the game, not your name, on it, and like all these things. Or what some people do, and what we're actually going to do, is they put title screens where there's 2D text for sure, but in the background there's still a 3D environment so that there's something slightly more interesting to look at. And the way we're going to handle this is I'm going to take Forest World and I'm going to duplicate it because I actually want to use this nice mountain scene that we've just made as the background of our title screen, just to sort of give the players a preview of what's to come. So you can name it title screen, and then make sure to double click on it and make sure title screen is up here. So we have our title screen. And if you remember what mine looked like when I previewed it in the beginning, it sort of just had two buttons on it, start game and quit game. And I actually don't care about quit game too much right now, so I'm going to ignore quit game for the time being. You guys can try to add that later on if you like. But what I will focus on instead is we'll try to add a title at the top and sort of show how that would be useful. So how do we add buttons? Let's start with that. So to add a button, Unity has a nice, more or less, UI system that handles everything related to displaying 2D objects in front of the player. So to do this, we're going to go into our hierarchy and do create UI, and if you hop down, we have button. Okay. So for me, it popped up right in the middle. This is by no means the case for everyone. So if you're on your scene view, you're probably not going to see anything, actually. You might see this big square now that exists. If you press F, your UI does actually exist in the world. It just ends up being absolutely massive for whatever reason based on Unity's decision. So this is how the UI looks in your 3D space. But if you look at the game view, it looks pretty normal. That's how it's going to look to the user. So perfect. If we press play, you can see, you can click the button. It's satisfying. It doesn't really do anything, but it's a nice satisfying click. So there you go. That's functional and that works. So now we want to make that button do things and maybe spice it up and make it more interesting looking. So there's a few things we have to do to prep for that. You can see that now that we've added a button, we actually have gotten 3 elements that we didn't have before. So we've gotten a canvas, and the canvas has the button underneath it. And we have an event system. And this event system is used to handle things like when you're clicking, or maybe if you build it for mobile, when someone taps the screen or anything like this, that's what handles it. So those will all get added automatically for you. So if we hop over to our canvas, there's one thing that we want to hit sort of early on, and it's a little bit difficult to show, but right now it's constant pixel size. If I press play, you can see how big it is. If I click maximize on play, you can see the button is more or less the same size, even though the screen changed dimensions drastically. So what we want to do to avoid that, because usually you don't want that to be the case, is you want to click on UI scale mode. So how it's going to get scaled with the screen is sort of the motivation behind that. And you go scale with screen size. And now when I press play, this should stay more or less as big as scales with the screen size. So just something we start out with. It tends to bite a lot of people right when they start. Like they design this UI and it looks amazing, and then they play it or like they build it out and it's like really, really tiny up in the corners, and they're like, what is happening? So just letting you guys all know, that might happen to you. And if it does, you know how to fix it. Cool. So now we have our button, and our button actually has something underneath it too, some text. So the text, if you click on it, is right here. It has some text, and we have our text right here. So I think button might not be the best name, so I might change that over to start game. Looks good. And now when I click on button, there's a bunch of things here. You can see we have transitions, a bunch of, it gets pretty in-depth, so I'm not going to worry you guys with it too much, but you can make buttons look cool is pretty much the moral of the story. You can change the colors of them. So if you want a red button, you can change it to a red button. I'm fine with Unity's default for now. Pressed color, disabled color. And if we go all the way to the top, we have things like width and height, which are perfect in this scenario because I actually want to just decrease the width a little bit. You can see it sort of very slowly decreases, but I'm just going to drag it over. Looks like about 100 is going to be good. Yeah, that's pretty nice. I don't want too much extra space on the sides right now. The buttons don't look that great, so let's make them as small as possible so people don't look at them as much. So in addition, we have things like our position. So if you see our position X, if I switch this to like 200, I'll get pushed over to 200, and X, in this case, ends up being left and right, Y up and down, Z forward and back. So the same as it was in 3D, but just with respect to your camera now. So yeah, I like centered for now. Center is fine, I think. So what we want to do is we want it to, the way we want to handle this is when we press start game, we want scene switchers switch scene function to be called. Unity makes this pretty easy actually. So first off, if you go to the bottom of your button, you see we have on click right here. On click is used to handle everything that should happen whenever the user clicks it. So if you want multiple things to happen, you can press plus a few times and you can get multiple things happening at the same time here. However, for now, I actually only want one. And that one thing I want happening is that scene switcher call. So the way to do this, to my knowledge, the best way to do this is to go down, click add component, and add our scene switcher onto the button actually. If I do that, the scene switcher is now on the button, and that works out fine. But what we really want is we want to get access to that in here and on click. So I can actually just click on the name and drag this around, which is, that's something some people don't know about this. So you can click on the name of this, and then you can just drag it into this, and it'll plop it in there. And now this is accessible. Click on that, go down, you can see we have game object, all these things that are on the button currently, as well as our scene switcher. And all the way at the bottom, switch scene is there. And the reason switch scene is accessible is because we made it public earlier. So now that it's there, you can see there is a entry right below it for which scene we want to switch to. So we can just type in Forest World. Awesome. And let's test it to make sure that that works. So start game, very basic level right now, and boom. And now we're over to our scene. The lighting is going to get a little bit funky. There is a reason for this, and I will go over it. But yeah, and then if I go over to here, hit that, and we're on to our next scene. So we can now switch between 3 scenes at runtime, which is great.